Okay, hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're not going to take a lot of your time up as we know you're all busy. So thank you again for joining us. My name is Rosalia. I think pretty much everyone in the attendees list, I've met all of you before in a previous webinar. But I work with World Vision, and at the moment, what we're doing is we're facilitating a series of webinars on monitoring and evaluation for development specialists who are interested in this space of work. What we hope to do is to create a safe space where um, people are able to have that conversation um, and then become, work collaboratively in the sector and then learn from best practices from each other, from both people working in M&E in Papua New Guinea as well as internationally. So our presenter for today is Jeanette. Jeanette is a former colleague, a former friend of mine. She's now with I'll let her introduce herself, but she used to be with World Vision as our M&E manager before Program Quality Manager. And that's where I first met Jeanette. But I will let her introduce herself. Just for housekeeping, I do apologize for the background noise. I'm at home at the moment. But housekeeping, there is a Q&A section. If you have any questions, please pop them in the Q&A. Jeanette has the opportunity to respond to them live, or we can park them until the end of the presentation. So I'll hand over to Jeanette now. And thank you very much all for your time. Thank you, Jeanette.
Thank you, Rosalia. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, and hope you're doing okay. I'm really privileged to be given this opportunity to speak on this topic, that data collection methods and tools. I will share my screen shortly, but just want to say that for me, been with I've been working within the monitoring and evaluation space for a few years, under 10 years. So I'll say I'm no expert yet, but I try to be. I hope that the insights you gain here will encourage you to explore further resources and build your understanding further on monitoring and evaluation, especially on the data collection methods and tools. So let me just share my slides and we'll start. I hope you can be able to see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Rosalia, please confirm. Okay, great. Thanks. All right. So my name is Jeanette Selep, and I'm currently working with Incentive Fund as the Monitoring, Evaluation, Research, Learning, and Adaptability Manager. I was previously with World Vision in the program quality space, and that was when my interest for monitoring and evaluation grew. And so, yeah, it's been a great learning curve and a lot of good lessons I've gained over the past years of working within the development sector. So, for today, um, what I will be going through with you and the slides that will follow would be within this scope. Um, we'll have probably a short introduction. I'll probably encourage you to post your introductions as in the comment section. But we will have time to go through data collection. What is data collection? Why data collection methods and tools? Methodologies for collecting diverse data types, exploring various data collection tools and strategies, and baseline surveys and monitoring tools. So first, I tried to view who was attending, but I wouldn't be able to know each one of you. But I do hope that you can share with me your details on the chat box. Maybe when it's Q&A, I could be able to glance through and see who's attending. But I'll be interested to see which organization you're from and maybe your experience on data collection methods and tools. I'd like to hear the good, the bad, and the ugly. I'm sure we all share different experiences within monitoring and evaluation, and I'm sure there are so many lessons that you have been able to identify and use as your means to either move on from that or improve your way of working. All right, so with regards to what is data collection, um, data collection is a process of collecting, measuring, and analyzing your insights. So it depends really on what research questions you are planning to explore. Um, Data that's collected can be used to inform your decisions and is can be used to improve the products and services that you offer. It is important when it comes to monitoring and evaluation and the data that you'd like to explore that you must always ensure to have your scoping and boundaries done so that you can be able to see what information you'd be collecting and what information you won't be collecting in that particular study, whether it's a baseline, whether it's ongoing monitoring, and whether it's an evaluation or whether it's a particular research or case study that you intend to draw up. Having a scoping and boundaries exercise is really helpful because then you'd be very focused on the particular type of data. Because when it comes to data collection, and there's so many different thoughts, so many different experiences and thinking that will be done, whether with regards to whatever topic you're thinking of exploring. So it's always good to consider um, doing your scoping and boundaries when it comes to a data collection so that it informs the right information that you're after. So, considerations prior to data collection. So, with this, you will note that there's a cartoon that I've placed here. This cartoon reads, after analyzing all your data, I think we can safely say that none of it is useful. This could mean many things. So could be that the data collection tools were not designed properly, the collection method was inappropriate, or there wasn't a clear focus or purpose of the data collection. So to collect data, we must first identify what information we need and how we will collect it. So we can also evaluate um, a hypothesis based on the collected data. And in most cases, data collection is the primary and most important step for research or study or whatever you may want to call it. And so the approach to data collection is different from different fields of study, depending on the required information that you're after. So here the cartoon itself also really portrays that we may be collecting information, we may have the tools to do so, we may have the an understanding of how to collect the tools, but if the data doesn't make sense at the end, it may just be a waste of time. So it's always important to have some considerations, again, leading back to our scoping and boundaries from the initial slide. Okay. Uh, Another one, misinterpretation and misunderstanding. So this cartoon here says, hey, look, we have a bunch of data. I'm going to analyze it. And then the friend responds saying, no, you fool, that will only create more data. So again, depends on the type of information that we are trying to collect. Sometimes because it may be too much data, it may be difficult to analyze, or it may be too small, and then it doesn't give good um, information, or say evidence, to sort of use as data to give meaning to a particular area or topic. Another one, before we analyze the data, we must analyze the person who came up with the data. So this is my favorite slide. And again, basing back on the importance of data collection, we must be able to know what sort of data we're collecting, where, what scope we're trying to focus on, and what tools we will be using. So again, we can be collecting so much data. There's so many opportunities and so many methods to do so. But when we don't know what it means and how we're going to use it, it will not make sense. So then it can end up as our trying to understand where we went wrong. Maybe it was the whoever that collected the data, the understanding is probably at that level, and that's the type of results we're getting. So it's always good and advisable to consider what type of research question you have, what scope will this research cover, and what are your boundaries, or where, or areas that you will not be exploring in that particular assessment or evaluation or baseline, or whatever study you are doing. So why data collection methods and tools? Well, with data collection methods and tools, um, it is vital for ensuring accuracy, completeness, and relevance of data for research and business purposes, or can be project purposes, whichever field you're working at. It is a way of preserving data integrity and reducing research bias, and it demonstrates a contribution of a program towards broader goals. So it gives you evidence of your progress. Data collection methods can enable analysis of your past strategies or lessons. It provides performance information to inform decision making and learning, so it can be ongoing, and it's accountable to funders and community stakeholders. So you can use it to for the donors' benefit, or for the community's benefit, or whoever your audience is. Again, so this other cartoon here says, sorry, second cousin. So the fun in data collection, it won't be as laborious as what we're seeing here, and then it doesn't get confusing. We're on track. We are on the right path to getting the right information, and that is why it's important that we use the correct data collection method and design the right type of tools. Okay, so when it comes to data collection methods, essentially there are four choices or options for you to collect data. It can either be in person, can be through emails or mail, phone, or online. The methods, there are many ways to collect. So the choice is there. So as I mentioned from the previous slide, there's a difference. So there are choices or options, and then you have the particular type of method that you can use when it comes to data collection. So there are many ways to collect information, and the type of method will depend on the type of research question posed. So it can be either through a survey, it can be through a test, or you're testing something. If you're either conducting interviews, it can also be through physiological evaluations, observations, and reviews of existing records and biological samples. So the types of data. Um, Through these methods, there are types of data that you'd be collecting could either be qualitative, quantitative, um, primary or secondary. So what do we mean when we say qualitative? So qualitative data collection refers to non-numerical research that gathers information on concepts, thoughts, and experiences. So this is information that you're gathering either through observations, surveys, hosting focus group discussions, and doing interviews. Typically, qualitative results are useful for experience-based topics, um, and it's common in humanities research and may use more personal methods of data collection. So some examples of qualitative data collection and research um, can include information on um, understanding a particular type of process or a change that happens over time, and you're gaining insights through speaking with people and assessing what their experiences have been. With quantitative data collection is the opposite of qualitative, and instead it collects numerical or statistical information. So an example of this might be a number of something, percentage, or an amount of time. Uh, for example, your results may be a number of, as mentioned, something, a percentage, or an amount of time, and it can be useful for measuring demographics for a particular project area. Can be comparing key statistics in your reports or indicators, and it is typically common in scientific areas of study, or it can also be through, if you're working in a project, it would be more useful to be used when you're collecting information about that particular community and you're comparing it across various different target communities. Primary data collection happens when researchers obtain information directly from the original sources. So, for example, if we were researching to find the best material for a particular product, we may interview experts in that area. Um, and these primary sources of data collection can vary depending on whoever we are interviewing. So sources of primary data can also include market or academic research. With secondary data collection, it refers to information gathered from previous research. So that can be, for example, through information collected through books or scholarly journals and papers, newspapers, websites, and podcasts. Okay, there are other, um, yep, sorry. So again, I cannot stress more on this. Uh, Jeffrey Moore, so he's an American organizational theorist. His statement here is, without big data, you are blind and deaf and in the middle of a freeway. So in this, really emphasizing that whilst we can express that data is important and we need it for decision making, we need to be able to know the right type of data to collect and the right diverse data types. These are basically just methods that we can use to collect data. So I've mentioned a few before that on how we can collect data, and now just unpacking it a bit more. The methodologies for collecting diverse data can either be through this. So if we're to use various methods, There are pros and cons that come with it. For example, for phone surveys, um, yep, we can be able to collect data by calling people, and um, if they have contact numbers, and it's effective. Um, but the cons for that is that it's time consuming, it can be expensive, and it can be dismissed as anecdotal. With online surveys, it's self-managed and you can get correct data, but it also, the downside of it is that it needs internet. And for a space such as PNG, sometimes when our internet connectivity is not as good, online surveys may not be the best unless and if we are able to um, have backup solutions on having or administering online surveys. With in-person interviews, it is very good because it can be in depth. We're able to collect more information, but it can be time consuming. So it depends on how much time we anticipate we would like to use to collect information, and time consuming also means that if the locations that we're collecting information from is far apart, it means traveling time, it means logistics, it means money, and it means so many things. So that's why in-person interviews can be um, time consuming in that regard. All right. So another other ways of data collection would be through observation. Um, Observational methods focus more on examining things and collecting data about them. Observational methods, this might include observing individual people in their place or home, wherever they are, and it avoids direct interactions between whoever is doing the research and whoever is being observed. So it either can be a person, or it can be a thing, or it can be an animal, whatever it is. Observational assessment is done, method is done without actual direct contact or interaction. Survey methods focus on gathering written or multiple choice answers about various subjects from individuals. And focus group method focuses on gathering information directly from users. So with focus group, whether it's mostly it's held through a discussion, this method usually focuses more on feelings, opinions, and emotions rather than statistics, whereas surveys would be definitely looking at statistics and um, the information that is being shared or queried. So when it comes to observation, if you choose to collect data using observation method, it will probably require you to use a checklist to ensure that you're recording the required information correctly, and whatever you're observing is premised around those particular variables listed in your checklist. If you choose to use survey method, um, you could either choose to use technology that you can build tools, and it might help you to manage a distribution of data and results that you would be exploring. With focus group, if you choose to collect data using this method, uh, you need to ensure to create general scripts that can help to guide the moderation of your focus group so that you're able to guide the conversations as you move from group to group without asking, um, maybe moderating it a particular way here and then moderating it a particular way in another group. You might lose the the meaning of that question or whatever you are researching, and you might end up getting different type of reflections or experiences. So it's always ideal to have a script prepared for your focus group discussion so that you're able to probe and unpack the responses that are coming through, and it's tailored towards a particular um, direction that you envision to explore. Okay, so there are also interviews. When it comes to interviews, this method can be more personal and involve face-to-face discussions about a topic between the whoever is doing conducting the data collection or researcher and the participant. So when you choose to do this method, you it would be ideal to record the sessions, whether through video or audio, because it may provide benefits if you plan to reference them when creating your write-up or whatever report, whatever document that comes out, output that comes out from this session. With design thinking method may focus on brainstorming with participants to generate unique ideas or solutions. So this could be an avenue where you use to craft your project designs or interventions so that um, information is gathered at that particular time to inform something. And so if you choose to collect data using this method, um, it would it would be ideal to have face to face, or can be virtual if you can, using physical or technology called sticky notes might provide benefits. So, yeah, that's when it comes to design thinking. I think others may also refer to it as mind mapping. It is always vital to note the responses in a manner that whoever is in the group or that forum is able to track whatever information is being generated, because this is where all the thinking are put together um, in a group, and everyone's ideas are all placed together in a particular logic, whichever the direction of that conversation goes. So user testing is another data collection method, and that's used by companies, organizations, usually to test during or after the development of a particular product or something. So if you choose to use it during development, it might be important, because then it determines whether the users of that particular product are happy with it or not. I think user testing, you can, it's important to also use this feature when you're drafting your data collection tool. Before going out and actually administering the tool, it's useful to have this tested, the tool tested prior, so that you know that whatever tool you're drafting is um, beneficial for whoever is going to be providing information into. Okay. Our next subtopic now. So we're getting deeper into exploring the different types of tools. Data collection tools can either be through using a software program or templates that can gather and analyze information. So when it comes to, and then the tools can make it easy to identify trends and draw conclusions of whatever research question you have. Um, the tools that are being drafted can be shared across the sector, and it can be, if it's done in a particular way, can store data for you. And sometimes the tools can be designed to collect and observe results over time, whether using cumulative data processes or using other analytical systems to, when it comes to visualizing your data sets. So with data collection tools, it is important because the tools can be used to collect the right information, and then you can have it organized in a particular way depending on how you want to do it. So you can use the data collection to collaborate with co-workers. So you learn about um, whatever you are planning to explore and interpret, or whatever the findings are. Um, you can also use it to deliver accurate information for decision making, and it is also a data point or a repository that you can use to reference information for future projects or future designs. And it can be one that also is used by the organization to make decisions whether you want to continue in this particular area or if there's any need of focus for the program. So when it comes to this data collection, the tools are really important, the method is really important, and most importantly, the research question is what will guide you to decide upon the right type of tool and the method to use and apply. um, all in all, as long as you have a clear scope of what you will be um, using or finding out, and boundaries on what you will not be exploring in that particular um, assessment. So just this cartoon say it reads, "Hey, you with the survey, quit collecting data. It's getting in the way of our doing stuff." So sometimes when it comes to program implementation or um, research, collecting information can become laborious, can be seen as the responsibility of monitoring and evaluation teams and not everyone else who's implementing the program. So that is a misconception and something that must be addressed, because data collection is not only for those that are collecting data, it's for everyone. Everyone collects data. Data can be coming through different ways and forms, as I've mentioned. And so it is very vital to recognize that information coming through in whatever ways and form is important for the program or your organization. So baseline surveys and monitoring tools. So this would be more familiar with for those that work within the development space. Um, when it comes to these three um, baselines, or it can be is done at the very beginning of the project to understand the status of a subject. So the question that's usually asked when doing a baseline is that, what is the current issue, and what do we want or need to know? And so that is when an assessment is done from the beginning. It's done once, it's based on a hypothesis, and it informs the interventions and plans or the designs. So, with this approach, you then draw up your research question, and you then decide on what particular method you'd be using to collect your data to inform your baseline. When it comes to measurement or monitoring, this is when we ask the question, are we making progress against our intended activities? So it's done on an ongoing basis, so ongoing collection of information, primarily for gaining insights early about what's working and what's not through data insights. Can be done at different times of the program, um, and different levels. Sorry, there's a typo here. So different types of the program, different times of the program, and at different levels. For evaluation, the question asked here is that, are those activities making a positive difference and avoiding unintended risks and consequences? So with evaluation happens right at the end of the whatever intervention, and it's done less frequently than measurement or monitoring. It's focused more on impact, and outcome is more analytical, so it involves a lot of judgments of merit or worth. It has two meanings, so you can either make a judgment or conducting a study, and it draws on measurement data, so the monitoring data. So these are three different intervals on when you'd be deciding on the type of data collection tool and the type of method that you'd be using. Okay. Um, my next slide will be a slight shift that focuses, that would probably outline what monitoring, um, evaluation, and learning means. But it is really important because then that could be something in future webinars that we can explore and unpack further. But when it comes to monitoring, evaluation, and learning, it is about it's more than just about reporting. It uses data and analyzes to understand what's happened and decide what to do differently. It is based on evidence and findings, and it is based on your own learning needs, the need to adapt and refine your activities as you proceed. So, with this, the purpose of data collection is to ensure that the right data is gathered to inform designs and decisions. Um, and so, why I've touched on monitoring, evaluation, and learning is that because most times when the role is there, we have a particular department or unit in the organization on M&E. Most times, the idea of drafting tools and templates for data collection and all that, the responsibility lies solely on the M&E team. That again, I'd say, is a misconception because I believe in a whole integral approach where we can then have project teams sit together with the M&E teams to decide on what information we'll be gathering. And that is very key, as I've been mentioning from the beginning. We need to be able to know our research question or what we're trying to explore to then be able to decide on the type of data collection tool and the method to use. And we'll need to be able to test those tools first before they are being administered. And because when we know this for sure and we understand what we are trying to collect and we know where we'd like to, what sort of results we're sort of going to anticipate or see, it will help us to be able to administer the assessment, whether it's a baseline, whether it's evaluation, whether it's midterm reviews, whether it's a research, scientific research, or a case study. We'd be able to know the right tool and the right method to use and apply during those instances. So, in summary, and apologies if I may have gone a bit too fast. If you've forgotten everything, just remember that when it comes to data collection methods and tools, it is important again that your method and tools that you're going to be using is very important for your program or whatever decision you'd be making. To collect the right type of data for your needs, your research question and purpose must be clear right from the start. And you must ensure to establish a clear scope and boundaries so that you know what information you're trying to collect and what you will not be collecting. And above all, ensure to plan so that you have uh, plan B and plan C when something doesn't work, when you are wherever you are, whether you're out in the field, whether you're on the phone talking to someone, or whether you're in the office analyzing data and you need to locate your data sources. So it's really important to plan all your methods and approaches or tools prior and know what you are looking for. Thank you. That's the end of our session. So please feel free to ask questions. Like I mentioned, I'll try to answer them as best I can. But if I'm not able to answer them, I can always go back and explore some more and respond, pass on the information to Rose to share. So I'm just going to stop sharing to allow for me to see your questions coming through.
All right. Thanks so much, Jeanette. So what I've gone ahead and done is I've unmuted everyone. So if
Yeah,
anybody has a question, please feel free to unmute and you can ask Jeanette your question.
great.
Um, just FYI, Jeanette, with Simon and Japeth have just put their details in the Q&A. And thank you very much
Yes.
for raising it, Simon and Japeth, that um, in the next webinar, we'll look at unmuting the chat so everyone can speak in the chat, but the Q&As are open. So let's give it, say, 2 minutes. And if nobody has
Yes.
any cues, then what I'll do is I will just do a summary of the presentation and then we will close things off and then avail all the resources for everyone. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to. Sorry, Joanne, were you trying to say something? No.
I think Japath has a question. He's raised his hand.
Please unmute yourself, Japeth.
Okay, good afternoon. Thank you for the presentation. Regarding the data collection, like most times we get into the field to get data collection, we sometimes experience the like the communities they do resist that. Uh, most most times they do not like to give like information that we really need to get this data. So these are some challenges that we face. Like what I'm trying to ask now is there any possibilities that we can use other method to go and get this data? That's the question.
Sorry, Japath. Just if I may, I'm just going to repeat what you were asking. So you're saying sometimes there's challenges to go into the communities to collect information because of some resistance. Is that correct?
Yes, that's the question. So like
Okay.
example, last time we used the one-on-one, the Q&A data collection type, and then like most they don't willingly giving us the information that we need. So is the other way that we can go in to get the data or information from those that they dislike to cooperate and getting the data from them or giving them questions to get the information?
Yeah, sure. I so that would depend. So that would depend on whatever method is feasible for you. Most times if the community is not really clear as to what we are looking for or what questions we're asking, they will not be responsive. Sometimes it depends on our relationship as well at the community. So aside from creating the tools and the methods, it's also about how we interact with them, the type of relationships we establish, and how we are viewed as from the community. Those are important factors that contribute to good data collection. And so, if there's resistance like this, and if it's a security threat, then don't hang around. But if it's something to do with the type of question that's being asked, maybe it's also important to report back to your team and then look at revising the question to a particular way that it's more understandable without trying to create more bias. So I think that's why I've mentioned that it's important to also do user testing, so that you're able to explore these areas before administering the question to the actual participant, so that you're able to pick out any discrepancies or anything from the before you actually get out to the field. So what from my experience, when I was with World Vision, a lot of times when we're drafting the data collection tools, we try to role play those questions and play a difficult community um, member and someone who's responsive and someone who doesn't understand the question. So we try to um, assess ways of going around those particular individual make believe individuals, so that we're able to have some clarity around how we can be able to manage those when we're in the community. But also note that with data collection, it also depends on your sample size. So if one person is not being responsive, you can always move to the next person and to the next person, or you could change your focus and probably move to the next community, depending on however it is more feasible for you. So don't stop at where it gets difficult. Try to find another way if it's really critical for you to be collecting that information. I hope I've answered your question. But sure, there would be so many other ways as long as it's feasible for you. So you could either do phone, you could use emails and do an email blast if you want, but it depends on what is more feasible for you in the context that you're working in.
Thank you. Thank you.
No worries.
Thank you, Japeth. Thanks, Jeanette. Do we have any more questions?
We do. So Simon has his hand up.
Please go ahead.
Hi, Jeanette, and hi, Rosalia. Um,
Hi.
I'll begin with affirming the one of the points that Jeanette you raised about when designing the tools. It's good that we have the project team as well as the M&E or program quality team sitting together to design the tools, as the project team would know what actually what is it that you want to get out of doing this data collection. Just a quick question. I see you emphasized more on plan, and better planning. So just a quick question on, what would be an, exceptional time frame for the whole planning and designing and designing the data collection tools and processes and methodologies and trial this out, and then the actual data collection. What would be an appropriate time frame that you can allocate for the whole process?
Yeah, this is a very good question. So uh, I would say, and this may not be a direct response, I'll probably go around, but I'd say for me, when it comes to planning, I'd always refer back to if I'm looking at a donor funded project, I'll always look back at the contracts to see when a particular study is required to be done, whether it's a baseline or evaluation or ongoing monitoring. Those dates are very important and are key to identifying how long I'd need. And so most times when it comes to either baseline or an evaluation, ideally it's good to at least have it 3 months before, the actual study is conducted or the time frame for when the report is due. So 3 months can seem a bit too long, but it's good because then you can draw up your terms of reference for the type of study that you're doing. So that's when you'll have your research question and your key questions that you'd be exploring. And then you'd be able to consider how many days you will need to train your enumerators, and then to and then prior extra time for you to start drafting your questionnaire or your survey or your observational checklist, whatever tool you're going to be using. Um, don't wait until the last minute. That's that's something we'd like to avoid. But for me, when it comes to this big milestones, whether it's a case study or a baseline or an evaluation, it's always ideal to at least have a 3 months mark. And so it then depends on the monitoring and evaluation team on however you schedule your time. So planning ahead is very important and key. For ongoing monitoring, it depends on the type of data you're collecting. So ongoing monitoring can happen either, um, again, whatever information you're collecting could be done on a daily basis, could be done on a monthly basis, could be done on a quarterly basis. Whatever it is, it depends on the tools again. Whatever information you're collecting, and how realistic is it to collect, so that it depends. If you are to prepare for ongoing monitoring, it's all about ensuring that the tool is clear for the type of information that you're collecting, and it's not too heavy so that it gets people get tired of collecting that information. When it comes to evaluation, again, 3 months. Know what you are going to be exploring. And even just from using your, as I mentioned, measurement data, you'd already be able to infer some of the conclusions from those monitoring data. So if you're able to plan ahead, it depends on whatever is more realistic, and again, based on your contract deliverables or dates or timelines. Always have a 3 month mark. Always be available for questions that are coming through from those that would be collecting the information, so that you're able to quickly pivot or change or adapt based on the context and the changing environments you'll be facing when information is coming through. So yeah, for big milestones, plan ahead. Um, whatever is feasible for you. 3 months is good. If you want to do 6 months, fine, but don't do 1 month and don't do 2 months, because you'd be surprised how time flies quickly when it comes to big reports like that. With your research studies, it depends again. If you're a good planner, you'd have a pipeline or a tracker for the number of researches that you'd be conducting, and the places and the timeframes, estimated timeframes for when you'd like to have that done. So that again depends on the individual or the type of study that's going to be conducted. And it's also good and advisable to have it on the tracker, on the pipeline, because you'd be utilizing other resources. Could be communications team, could be the management team or the leadership team, depends on what you're looking for. Could be the government or the other NGOs that would be supporting the process. So it's always ideal to have your plans outlined clearly and ample time. So for me, it's always 3 months for big studies, and on a monthly basis for ongoing monitoring. It sometimes can be day to day, depending on what I'm looking for. I hope that's answered your question.
Thank you, Jeanette. I think that answers my question. The other question is, different surveys, different tools and methodologies, they associated with, I mean, if you are doing a business research survey or if you are doing a program implementation. Uh, just one quick question on, like, if you are doing a, program implementation or project, and if you want to do a baseline or an end line evaluation, when designing your tools, what are some of the documents that you could draw your questions out from in order to, to put in your questionnaires or to design your tools?
No, that's a good question too. So let me start with the baseline. So with your baseline, the documents that you could, it may not be, so again, the organizations may differ. Some organizations or designs, programs or program designs come with a list of questions or indicators that they, intending to implement on and get results out of. So you could use your design document to gain some understanding on what the project is about for you to then trigger some thinking around the type of questions you'll be asking. Some will have a list of indicators already that informs the organizational strategies. So that could be also your guiding tool. And others could be the local policies, the national policies or strategies or standards that you can also use to draw an understanding on the type of information that you'll be assessing. And it can be again on the design, the questions when you're drawing up information from it, if you don't have particular indicators that you'd be measuring over a particular time, there's always options when you're looking across the different documentations that you have, whether it's your contract, the design document, current policies and strategies from the government, other other key documents that the project will come with. You could always draw questions that would sort of imply that you are trying to, understand something on. So sometimes this could also be referred to as proxy questions that would allude something that you're looking for but may not really answer it unless you provide more information or evidence to it. So key documents to use again depends on what you have and depends on the project design. But I'd always look at the design document of that project because then it gives the scope. And then you then decide based on this scope, what will you be looking for specifically? And that's when you create your boundaries that you will not be exploring this side of the design, but you'll be focused more on this aspect. When it comes to evaluation, so evaluation most times would be drawing lessons from the data that you're collecting on an ongoing basis. And you can also be using the same references that you used when you were doing your baseline survey. So most times when it comes to evaluation, please don't create anything new, any new questions, because what you're trying to do when you're doing an evaluation is you're trying to prove a hypothesis, or you're trying to prove that whatever you've sort of planned to do, you have achieved or you have not achieved. So you can't be asking new questions for things that you've not done any intervention on, because that's not an ideal case. That's when you start finding out new information that you did not have anything to do with before. But however, if you do follow all your if you do collect information from your monitoring data, or use the same resources that you've been able to use, like the policies or the design documents, but still find out that there's some new learnings, you can always classify those new learnings as a result of the intervention. So I mean, not direct interventions, but could be something considered as unintended outcome. For example, the baseline that you've conducted, you may be looking for why there's a lot of violence happening in that particular community. And so your intervention would be, for example, conducting trainings on gender-based violence, looking at referral processes, looking at activities that would do trigger behavior change. And upon evaluation, you've identified that, for example, and this may be so not close, but for example, you now can see that so many the education pass rate within the school is has increased, which is not really in relation to your gender project, but it is a result of the interventions that you've done, not directly but indirectly, if I make sense. But um, I'd say the resource documents depends specifically on what you're looking for, and it could be whatever you have on hand, or could be something that the organization already has. Is that, have I answered your question?
Yes, thank you. That um,
Okay.
gives more understanding. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Simon.
Thank you. Jeanette, we have a question from Murphy in the questions and answers
Yes, of course.
section. Are you good with picking that up? Are you okay to?
Yeah. Hang on. Let me see if I can see. I think I'm not able to see
Okay,
what
so that's okay.
brought that up.
Murphy, I'll just read Murphy's question. So Murphy's asking, from your experience, what are some best ways to analyze qualitative data?
Oh, wow, okay. So this one, qualitative data, I guess the best way to analyze it is to use a thematic approach. So it can be, when you're analyzing qualitative data, it's very laborious. So it can be time consuming because of the amount of information that you'd need to filter. So most times, before you as you're drafting your questions to then go out and conduct your study or your assessment, um, it's also good to just think through what particular themes or answers would be coming through with this question, and have it there as ready to use. Because after the data is being collected, you then need to categorize those responses into particular thematic areas before you can analyze. If you do have the capacity to purchase an actual software or an application that you can use to analyze this information, that's very good. But then you can't just throw in that information and expect the software to analyze it for you. You'd need to come up with particular thematic areas so that it's easy for you to be able to analyze how many particular responses are alluding to one particular theme or area. That in that way, you're then going to be able to get a sense of the type of responses that are coming through for a particular subject or experience, and how many. So with qualitative data, although it's can be text heavy, you're actually able to use um, analytical systems that would quantify the responses if you follow. So that's it comes back to the team, whoever the data collection team are, to consider appointing time and looking at putting the particular responses into themes. So you can have like a larger theme, like one word, and then you can have supporting subset thematic areas. So it helps you with filtering the amount of information and responses that are coming through from the different focus group discussions. So remember that when you have focus group discussions or when you're doing qualitative data collection, it can come as a response from one person, or it can be a response from 10 different people in a particular group. And that's, yeah, you'd have to then filter those responses into those different areas. So part of your, I'd say from my experience, what we'd usually do is when we're preparing in advance, and I give, again, this 3-month mark, it can be more, when we're drafting the research, the research questions or the type of questions that we'll be exploring, we then draw up particular thematic areas, whether it's primary or sub, and then have it ready in the planning process right from the start. So when we're collecting information, it's easy to then, when we're analyzing, we're filtering through before we start analyzing that particular data, whether it's a particular word or a particular phrase. And then if we'd like to analyze further, we're then able to use, because we've done our recording, we're able to use particular quotes to support the analysis that we've sort of drawn out using the thematic areas.
Okay. Thank you so much for that, Jeanette. I know we're running well for time. I'm just mindful of time now. So if there's any other questions, what I will do is I will avail the presentation recording to everyone, and also Jeanette's contact details, which are also on her PowerPoint. For any further questions. But before we close off, I'd just like to say thank you very much to Jeanette, and thank you to all of our registrants this afternoon. I'm just going to do a quick run through of a summary of Jeanette's presentation, and then we'll just close things off for this afternoon. So Jeanette, thank you for your presentation. Jeanette started off with introducing us to data collection, the process of collecting data, measuring, analyzing tools, scoping boundaries are very important. The iteration of boundaries throughout, and which allow you to be focused on what sort of data you're collecting. Considerations for data collection. Also, she spoke about misinterpretation and misunderstanding, and understanding the importance of why we collect data. Then she went on to highlight the different sorts of types of data collection. The 4 options were presented in person, mail, online, and interviews, and the types of data that is collected during the actual process, which is qualitative and quantitative. There's also primary and secondary data. The different data collection methods. And I think one misconception she said was, she spoke about was that M&E can be sometimes perceived as a hindrance during the process where project officers are trying to implement, and there's an M&E monitoring and evaluation going on. And it's actually a very important part of that process of project implementation. And then she went on to talk about, explain about baseline, measurement and monitoring, and evaluation itself. And I think one very important aspect that Jeanette iterated to was the need for data, and also the need to have the project staff participate in the M&E process. It's an important aspect as, it allows projects to refine, the need to adapt and refine activities based on M&E outcomes. And I think 4 things that came through as being very strong areas were the type, the scope, the tools, and the boundaries when doing M&E. But thank you very much to Jeanette. What we've done in this series of webinars going forward is that, without assuming that everybody knows everything there is, even currently practicing M&E people understand what M&E is. So we're starting with the basic building blocks now. So Jeanette has taken us through the very basics of M&E. In the next webinar next month, we will be progressing that to the next step, which is data collection, the different types of collection, and going a little bit deeper into those sort of tracks. But thank you very much to Jeanette for your time. Thank you to all of our registrants for your time. I will avail a copy of the recording and the slide in the coming week to everybody. I think without further ado, I'm going to say thank you again, and I'm going to close off our webinar for this afternoon. Thank you, Jeanette, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Rose.
You all have a lovely, wonderful afternoon. Okay, bye-bye.